You guys for another show, for another episode of our tactical breakdown series. Now, this is the show in which we usually take a tactical look at either players, matches, and fixtures. Of course, we've done tactical breakdowns throughout the season with Graham and Drew, looking at the Newcastle game, the Burnley game, and unfortunately the Liverpool game as well. But I thought we'd do more of a tactical breakdown in terms of looking at how Arsenal may line up against Spurs on Sunday. And I wanted to do it in a live form as well, so I can interact with our fantastic live chat that tunes in every single episode. Thank you to so many of you guys that have been tuning in. If you have been enjoying the series and all the shows, please give them a like. Please subscribe if you're new with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show and you can actually get involved in these live chats. But for the people that are here, thank you ever so much for tuning in, people. I'm glad that you are here, and I'm glad that you're here to discuss and talk about what and how Arsenal may line up on Sunday. So let's get straight into things. Now, I'm going to be using the lineup builder, which is a website that you can use very simply, and it basically just lets you build that. So hopefully it's going to pop up on your screen. Hopefully it's doing that now, and it should be. Yes, it is. Good stuff. So I think we can all say that the goalkeeper is probably the easiest one to sort, and that is Leno. I think Leno, we know, is going to start. That is going to be our goalkeeper. He's been very good for us so far. I think that he hasn't really put a foot wrong too much in these games. I don't feel like he could have done any better in scenarios. I think he's played the ball out fine. He's never been scapegoated so far this season. He's not really someone that I focus on as a weak point. In fact, we've seen a couple of combined lineups of sorts, and that has obviously led to some discussions and arguments and debates between people. But I just feel that at the moment, I would in fact place Leno above Lloris. Lloris has sort of had a 2 seasons where he has struggled, I think. He's certainly in decline as a goalkeeper, in my opinion, and I think that Leno is certainly one of those on the rise. And at this moment in time, I think he has superseded the Frenchman in goal. And personally, I think that Leno is the superior of the 2 goalkeepers, and he could really come into play. In the game against Burnley, that shot that was taken at so close range, it was offside. I believe it was Barnes, but his reaction time to that save, to make that save, was brilliant. And for him, I thought that was a highlight, even though technically it weren't even in play. But I'm confident with Leno in goal. He's certainly a goalkeeper that can develop and improve at Arsenal, and I'm very happy with him being in goal against the Spuds. So let's talk about right back. I think we know who this is going to be, and this is also an opportunity to see any spelling mistakes, which is inevitably going to pop up at some time. I hope not. Maitland-Niles is going to be our right back. I think we know that. Bellerin, according to our press conference with Unai Emery. Now, if you want to go check out the press conference with Unai Emery, we did in fact do a raw reaction to that and a press room, as we call the show's episode, which is on the channel, so please go and check that out. But he said, Unai Emery, that Maitland-Niles will be back. Bellerin will be back in September in full-time training, which is really, really positive for Arsenal. And hopefully moving forwards, we're going to see that he will be integrated into the team, and that would be really, really great. So in terms of right back, I think there's only one option for us to play, and that is Ainsley Maitland-Niles. He's going to be up and down that pitch like mad. He's going to be moving up, definitely utilising the fact that we can play him on the wing and play him further up the field. And I think for us, it's going to be really important as he pushes further up the pitch. Now, the centre-back roles are tough because I have been conflicted in what I want to go for. I think that he will still go with David Luiz and Socrates. But I've been really conflicted as to whether we should put Callum Chambers back in the team. David Luiz had quite a poor performance in the second half against Liverpool, obviously giving away the penalty. He was exposed for the 3rd goal, and he never sort of was able to recover from those instances. I think that when it came down to the first half, he was strong. He headed the ball away when he needed to. But we should not be setting up our team to absorb crosses like we did against Liverpool, because Spurs have a striker that can take advantage of those positions, take advantage of those crosses in Harry Kane, and we can nowhere near allow anywhere near as crosses against Tottenham Hotspur as we did against Liverpool. And for that reason, I don't think that there is a need to play the same 2 centre-backs that deal with those crosses in that way. But you could argue that playing those 2 means that we do protect ourselves more from aerial balls when they are allowed to go into the box. And I think that he will go with that. I think that one of the 2 that we can be sure that will be playing is Socrates in that team. I think that he will be playing. Don't ask me to spell his full Greek name, because it ain't going to happen. And it is the other one. I personally still think it will be, and would probably still choose David Luiz as that choice. Now, Chambers is, of course, someone that we could go for. Let me know if you think that Chambers is someone that we should possibly put in that team. I think he's an option, but I think David Luiz is going to be the one that ultimately starts. We can't be caught out of position, and it's going to be key. Let's see what some of you guys are saying in the live chat. Phil Hawke says that I'd like Chambers and Socrates as centre-back with Luiz and Torreira in holding midfield. So actually he thinks that Luiz should be played further forward. That's really, really interesting. Vayenar says that Spurs are very narrow, so it could be good for us. In terms of Mil Onyx says there that he suggests maybe we should be playing Chambers in that team. It's going to be really intriguing to see whether he does go with David Luiz and Socrates. I think he will, but there's always that chance that he might not, and in which case Chambers, I think, is the guy that comes in. Another positive that came out of the press conference is that Rob Holding is nearly there. In fact, after the international break, we should be seeing Rob Holding come back in. In terms of left back, I think it's going to be Kolasinac, because this move from Monreal to Real Sociedad edges ever so much closer to being officially announced, if it hasn't been already, by the time you watch this video. But Kolasinac is seemingly the choice until, of course, Kieran Tierney comes back into the team. And are we taking a risk by letting Monreal go this early? I think we are. If he was still in this squad before the weekend's game, I actually would have played Monreal in that match. I wouldn't have played Kolasinac, because I think Kolasinac, while he offers us some great skill and great drive going forwards, it's his issues going backwards that really do worry me. And I think that him being disciplined and getting back when we need him to is going to be something that Arsenal really struggle with moving forwards. Let's see what some of you guys are saying. Ashwin says there that Monreal should definitely play in terms of that position. We need that solidity and that discipline and that security to our backline that Kolasinac doesn't really bring to the side moving forwards. Now, the midfield is a really interesting choice because Lucas Torreira came on against Liverpool and performed well, scored a goal. His statistics are very, very good. Some people have even suggested we should be playing David Luiz in midfield for this game, which I think is a little bit step too far. I think if you're going to do that, you trial it. I don't think you do it in the North London derby. But I think the defensive midfield person has to be Lucas Torreira in this game. I think Lucas Torreira is certainly someone that now has enough minutes, enough training, enough preparation to come into this team. And I think the person to partner him in that midfield has to be Matteo Guendouzi. I think that Guendouzi has shown so far this season that he is one of the standout players, if not the standout player. I thought he was quiet against Liverpool, and that was expected. It wasn't really on the centre midfielders in that game whatsoever, but I thought he was very, very good in that game. Now, we have to make a choice in the other centre midfield position. As you can see, I've decided to play this person here in more of an advanced role, and if that gives you any clue to who you think it should be, I think it should be fairly obvious, and that is, of course, Dani Ceballos. Now, Dani Ceballos playing in that midfield position, we know that he is going to push forward in that role. We know that he's going to move forward. We know that Guendouzi will also be wanting to push forward in through that midfield as well. And in terms of where we're at with those two, I think they're our strongest two midfielders. That does mean that Granit Xhaka and Joe Willock are left out of the starting lineup. But I just think in terms of movement and freedom and flair and technical ability, they are our strongest midfielders for that position. And they're the personal three that I would play. But please, in the chat box, please tell me who you think that you would play in that midfield. Do you agree with me? Or do you actually think that Joe Willock should play? Do you think that Granit Xhaka should play? Mogos says there that Xhaka, Torreira and Ceballos would be his choice. Midfield is obvious for Matt Hales. He says it should be Torreira, Willock and Ceballos. Simple. Asaf says that play Ozil and Ceballos in the midfield. Olakayoda, I'm so sorry, mate. He says that Guendouzi, Ceballos and Torreira should play. Arsenal for Life says that he would prefer to play Willock and Ceballos in the midfield. Tell me who that other third midfielder would be for you. AJ says, do you prefer Ceballos at 10 or deeper in a Xhaka position? I prefer him slightly further forward. I wouldn't call him a number 10. I would call him a number 8 still. I don't think number 10 is his out-and-out role. I think with him, you play more flat, even though my lineup there is sort of in that midfield through Ceballos. I don't think he's a 10, though. As you can see there, I'm playing him a little bit further up in that position where the Guendouzi's slightly behind him. But if anything, what we're going to see is Ceballos drop in. Torreira's going to go more central and sort of that pivot midfield to Guendouzi and Ceballos with Torreira more in behind. But what we could see is a midfield that changes for Ceballos going further up the top there. Torreira and Guendouzi become more of a pivot, and we go with a more 4-2-3-1 type formation, and that will depend on who we play up top, of course. But I think mainly we're going to see more of a flatter midfield with those three in there, but Torreira going to be the deepest, Ceballos being the most further forward, and Guendouzi sort of in between in that role for the ones that are going to be there. Wisdom says that I prefer Torreira, Ceballos and Ozil. Very interesting. Nikos reckons that Emery will go for Xhaka, Guendouzi and Willock. Now, that is the other thing, is that I think in terms of what he will actually go for, I think Xhaka will play. It's not my choice. It's not who I would pick, but I think Xhaka will play in that lineup alongside Torreira, with Ceballos maybe a little bit further in front. I don't know if that's going to be right or not. That's who I think he'll pick. I think it will be Xhaka, Torreira and Ceballos, just to add that little bit of, we need more security in the midfield than when we did against Liverpool. We played with a midfield diamond to try and overload their midfield, knowing that their width was going to be their most potent weapon. With Spurs, it comes much, much more through a central area. We're going to see the likes of Lamela possibly playing centrally, Son and Lucas Moura out in wide positions. With Eriksen maybe coming in. That's the issue, is we don't know whether Eriksen plays or not. And that's a really big issue that Arsenal going to basically have to second guess. If he doesn't, I think Lamela plays more centrally, Son, Moura in wide positions. If he doesn't play, I'm really, really not sure. I don't think Lo Celso starts. I think that he's still not fit enough. Dele Alli's still coming back from an injury. Whether he starts straight away again, I'm not sure. If he does, I think he'll play in that more central role. With a midfield of Ndombele, is a chance for him to play Sissoko as well in there. There's so many options for them. Winks could come in too. I just think that they're more potent in their midfield than in wide positions than what we saw. And in terms of the wide, I know that Moura and Son are very dangerous, but I don't think their fullbacks add the width. So therefore, I think that the midfield is going to be really key for Spurs on that day. And it's going to be intriguing because, as Milonic says, that can Kolasinac hold Son in that role? Whether Son plays on the left or the right, I don't know. I thought more so that we see Lucas Moura play on the right-hand side than playing with Son. But I'm really, really not sure who's. Nico says that Eriksen is their key piece. I definitely think that Lucas is. And Nico also reckons that Torreira is a must start in that position. Let's move on and talk about the front line. You can see the lineup I've gone for as a front three, and I think it's very obvious to say who I think will start in these positions. Of course, it's going to be Pepe. Of course, it's going to be Nketiah. No, I'm only joking. It's going to be Lacazette as the central striker, with Aubameyang for the first time this season pushed out to a more wide position on the left-hand side. Aubameyang. Let's get that spelling correct. Pepe, Laka and Alba starting for the first time has been something that we know needs to happen. We know that they're inverted. We know that Aubameyang is right-footed. We know that Pepe is left-footed. We know that they are going to be doing that. We know that Laka is going to be going forwards. And we know that he's also needing to be dropping back in behind as well and covering and getting back and doing what he does best in those positions, which is messing around, playing in different positions, playing freely and supporting the midfield too. I think that's really, really important moving forwards, that he plays forwards, but he also comes back. We know that Pepe as well is going to need to cover Ainsley Maitland-Niles. We know that Aubameyang is going to have to come back and cover for Kolasinac because we know what they're like. They need to be up and down that wing, moving continuously in that game. Whether they do that or not is another thing. Aubameyang is going to be moving up the field wide. Whether he cuts back or not, I don't know. It's very doubtful that they actually make it to that byline. If they do make it to that byline, you know that their left foot, or rather left foot for Aubameyang and the right foot of Pepe, are much weaker. So depending on what they do and how they move, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think they should all three start. I think we know that. And seeing him start for the first time is going to be really exciting. Do I think Emery will do it? Well, in the press conference video that we did yesterday, he said that we should stay calm, but he also said a yes in terms of answering the question of will they all start. He said yes, but we need to remain calm. It's very difficult to remain calm when you can see those three possibly playing together. Who knows whether they will or not? Do you think that those three will start? I certainly do. I think that should be the lineup that we go for. I think it's something that we know that Arsenal in particular really sort of have been tentative with playing. And in terms of how Arsenal stack up playing with that front three, we don't really know from the start. I do want to talk a little bit about the Europa League draw in a little bit. But before I do, I think it's important to get your thoughts in that chat box going forwards. So Wisdom says, but honestly, we're going to talk, why is it that Emery doesn't want to address this issue? We don't have a first team. Emery, every day, Emery changes players. Why is it so? Because it's not good enough for the team. In terms of why he changes things, we know that we needed a manager that would come in and tactically change things based upon the oppositions that we go up against. Previously, we had a manager in Arsene Wenger that was very set in his ways, knew exactly what lineup he wants to play in each match. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it worked really, really well. And the consistency was obviously important, and it was beneficial in the positives that it brought to the team. But I think that Emery, what he brings in is a little bit of dynamism. He brings a little bit of fluidity. And in terms of that, when you're going up against different teams, you need to play with different structures and different systems and different formations and different players. And all those things contribute. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Against Liverpool, I thought the formation did work. For the first 40 minutes up until we conceded, we had chances, we hit them on the break, and unfortunately we couldn't take them. As Graham said in the Tactical Breakdown show, he said that we tried to play a system that worked, but actually it was the execution of that system that failed. And that's down to the players rather than Emery in terms of that system. And I think that's really important to remember. It's very easy to get frustrated with Emery. I think we know that. I would have personally played that front three against Liverpool, but I think we would have been much more open and the scoreline could have been very different and definitely not in our favour had we played that front three. But ultimately, it was been a risk, and we could have actually gone out there and took the game to Liverpool with that front three being really, really dangerous, but we didn't. I think we've now got a Lacazette that comes back much, much fresher, much, much more gunning and available to win the game for Arsenal. I think that could work to our benefit. Whether it does or not is a different thing, but I think there's lots of positives that we could possibly take moving forward. Jack Butler says, "Hey, loving the content, bro. Thank you ever so much for tuning in, mate." Phil Hulk says that we are still waiting on players to get fitness, and we need to invest in a couple areas to get a top 11. We certainly do need to invest, but we need to focus on what we've got now. YY says that we won 3-0 in the second half last season with a 4-diamond-2 formation. So the same sort of formation we saw against Liverpool. Should we go 4-3-3 in attack and a transition to a 4-diamond-2 in the defence? I think it's something that we could possibly do. I don't think it will happen. If we look at the lineup again, in terms of defensive positions, what we're going to see is obviously Aubameyang's going to drop back. Pepe's going to drop back. Lacazette will go more flat. Ceballos will become more of a central side of things with Guendouzi dropping back into a pivot with Torreira. And that's sort of the formation that we'll see in defence. When we're on the attack, we know that we're going to see Lacazette push up, Aubameyang push up, Pepe push up. Ceballos moves slightly on drift. He likes to drift slightly left, in fact, which could see Guendouzi move slightly right, with Torreira coming into a more central position. Obviously, Kolasinac pushing up with Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Now, whether they do that or not is another thing. But of course, I think that's the way that we will go. I think that's the attacking lineup that will work, and I think we'll see a lot of positives coming out from our wide positions. Danny Rose will most likely start, with Serge Aurier coming back in. Walker Peters took a knock, and whether Foyth comes back for that game, I don't know. Serge Aurier hasn't played this season, as far as I'm aware, and Walker Peters is very inexperienced if he does come back and recover from his injury. Danny Rose is not the player that he used to be, and I think he is struggling. Ben Davies possibly coming back from fitness, but I still don't know whether he'll start, and I think wide positions is certainly somewhere that we can and will hurt them, and I really, really hope we see that coming forwards in the future. So in terms of the Europa League draw, is something that Arsenal have always sort of been, I don't want to use the word apprehensive about, because a lot of people fail to get excited about the Europa League draw, and I can understand why. I can understand why they fail to get excited about it, because we're coming up against teams very often that aren't in attractive locations. They're not particularly big teams. They're not particularly teams which are going to inspire people, and I get that. But what I think is different about this year in particular is that actually we've seen Arsenal come up against a few sides that I think really benefit us moving forwards. And I think they come up against sides in which we're really going to see Arsenal flourish with their youngsters and test themselves against some really intriguing sides moving forward. So I'm going to get up on the screen for you now the full Europa League draw and the full Europa League group stage stuff. So let's share that screen with you now and get that up for you. So we obviously got paired against a team from pot 2, pot 3 and pot 4. And usually what happens is they diminish in quality going down. But actually overall, I think we saw a very, very good split between all of those and some really good quality. So here we go. Here's the full draw, but we're looking here specifically at Group F. Group F contains us, Arsenal. We are paired with Eintracht Frankfurt, Standard Liège and Vitoria. And we've got a German team, a Belgian team and a Portuguese team ahead of us. I'm really, really happy with it. I'm really happy with it for a few reasons. The first off is a selfish one. First off is that I know 3 people perfect to do the eyes of the opposition shows and give you the lowdown on those specific teams. One you will know because it's Drew. Drew, our good friend Drew, is a German expert, so he'll be able to tell everything about Frankfurt. Another one you should know from our tactical breakdowns, and that's Jose Miguel, big sporting fan in Portugal. He's sporting in a group of PSV, Rosenborg and Lask from Austria. But he'll know all about the Portuguese league and hopefully he'll be able to educate us all on Vitoria. And Standard Liège, Belgian team, I'll be hitting up some friends at Football Radar. I hope to get you the best insight on Standard Liège ahead of that game. So really, really looking forward. I think it's a strong team, a strong group rather. I think we can test ourselves. We can test the youngsters. Martinelli coming in, Reece Nelson, seeing Joe Willock play some more, seeing Mavropanos possibly back and fit for those games, seeing him play, testing some of the newcomers like Tierney coming back in. Good way to bed him into the first team setup as well. Really, really good opportunities for those players coming through. Mkhitaryan's going to get some minutes. Ozil possibly getting back and playing more minutes for the team. I think it's really, really good that we've not got teams far away. Portugal, Belgium, and Germany, not long trips. I think I saw a tweet saying that our round trips are around 1,600 miles compared to an 8,000 round mile trip for Manchester United, which is really, really good and positive for Arsenal. I'm really, really looking forward to it. Let me know what you think about those lineups. Ryan Arsenal says Portugal holiday. That's sweet. I know that a lot of people look at these games as a place that they can visit. Nikos isn't happy with the Europa. He says that the Europa is embarrassing. Ryan Arsenal says that Belgium and Germany is not bad whatsoever. If we actually look at the United group, United are literally in Group L. Very, very funny. If we actually look at the group in whole, Manchester United in a group with Astana, Partizan Belgrade, and AZ Alkmaar, which obviously are in the Netherlands. Astana and Partizan Belgrade. Two very long trips that they're going to have to make. And, I mean, good. It means they're going to be less prepared coming back for those Premier League games. The groups overall, I think there's some really interesting ties in the whole group of things. Group J, for instance, you've got Roma, Serie A, Mönchengladbach, obviously German team, Istanbul, Başakşehir. Oh, I'm really sorry about pronunciations there. But they had a really, really good time in Turkey. Obviously, Adebayor, I know, is linked to them. I don't know if he still play for them. Gael Clichy also rings a bell for them. But they've got some really intriguing players. Does Yilmaz maybe as well still plays for them? I know he was at Galatasaray. I don't know if he moved to Başakşehir. You've also got Wolfsburg, an Austrian team. Don't get confused with them in the German side. I think it's their first time in the competition. You've got Group G, which contains Rangers. You've got Porto, Young Boys, and Feyenoord. A really, really interesting group there as well. Wolfsburg's group, you've got Wolfsburg itself, Ghent, and Saint-Etienne. Will be interesting seeing William Saliba or Saliba coming in and playing those games in Europe. Really, really good preparation. And Group E, Lazio, Celtic, Rennes, and CFR Cluj, obviously a really, really dangerous group for them. What I found funny in the Champions League draw was seeing Slavia Prague paired against Barcelona, Dortmund, and Inter Milan. Really, really tough group for them. Group K, it's interesting seeing where Wolves place in this competition. Besiktas, where we could see Mohamed El Neni playing there this season. Braga, Portuguese team, and Slovan Bratislava. I think they will get through that group. I think, in fact, they'll top that group. I think they've got the quality to do that. But it's interesting seeing some newcomers. Getafe, obviously, back in there, the Spanish team against Basel, Krasnodar, and Trabzonspor. I really can't talk today. Trabzonspor, interesting group. I think Getafe have got a really good chance. Obviously, speaking from someone who really likes La Liga. Sevilla, I think, will top their group. In terms, there's another Spanish team, Espanyol, my personal following of my Spanish team, Espanyol, CSK in Moscow, Ludogorets, and Ferencváros, which I've never really heard of before. They're in that group. I think Espanyol could definitely get out of there, and I think they will do that. Sporting, PSV, Rosenborg, and Lask. I think that Sporting and PSV will come out of that on top. Dynamo Kiev, Copenhagen, Malmo, and Lugano is an interesting one. I think Dynamo Kiev, and then it'll be a straight fight to the finish for Copenhagen and Malmo. Who haven't I covered yet? We've talked about them. We've talked about all of them, I think. Group A with Sevilla, Apoel, Karabag, and Dudelange. Sevilla, I think, will come out on top, and it'll be between Apoel and Karabag to go through. So you've got some really interesting ties in the Europa League there. In terms of where that leaves us going forward, I think there's an opportunity for us, obviously, to get out of that group with some really, really good games. I don't think you call it a group of death. I think it's a group of death for any of the other teams in that group completely. But for Arsenal, I think you should see us easily beating those teams. Don't take Eintracht Frankfurt lightly. They've still got some decent players, even though they've lost Haller to West Ham. And, of course, they lost Jovic to Real Madrid. But they've still got some decent players. Rebic, I know. Da Costa, I believe, is still there. Kostic. Some really, really interesting players in that side that could do some damage. I really, really do think they could. And I think they will come through that group with us. But in terms of the other teams, Standard Liège, they know they've got some decent players in the Belgium league. Never really sort of top that group as much as you see Genk and Ghent and so Club Brugge as well, of course. So really, really tough and competitive to leave the Belgian league. And for those lesser teams, we should see some decent competition for those younger players at Arsenal. And then, of course, we've got Vitória, who are a decent Portuguese side, nowhere near the likes of Porto and Benfica, Sporting. and even Braga, but they're a decent side, and I think they'll offer us some really good competition. So I can't wait to see us play against those teams. A lot of people write off the Europa League, but I quite like seeing a little bit of exotic nature. You know, I'm a bit of a hipster in terms of those football teams, so it'd be interesting to see how we fare. But I'm going to wrap things up there. I hope you've enjoyed the show, looking at the lineup ahead of the North London derby. Tell me in the comments if you're watching on playback what your personal lineup would be. Do you agree with mine? How different would yours be? And what do you think of the Europa League draw as well, which is obviously the latest piece of news that is out there in the world? Are you happy with our group? Is it good competition, or would you have preferred actually seeing us come up against some teams where we really would have faced hardly any competition whatsoever? Thank you ever so much for tuning in. If you've been enjoying the series, give it a like, please subscribe, and turn those notifications on so you can tune in with that live chat. Like so many people here have been. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. Thank you ever so much for getting involved with the live chat. I hope to see you again very, very soon. You should see. I'm going to the game also on Sunday. I'm going to try and see if I can sort out maybe a little vlog thing, not during the game. Not a big fan of that, but a vlog around the game, before the game, after the game. We'll see what happens. No promises. It's going to be a real test run sort of thing, so we'll see. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.